The Sterling Grand Hotel hadn't changed in 15 years. Same crystal chandeliers, same Persian carpets, same judgmental whispers echoing off marble walls. I stood in the lobby, invitation card rolling between my fingers, watching the city's elite filter into the annual Madison Prep reunion. Ms. Alexandra Crawford? The concierge approached with practiced deference. The Wellington Ballroom is ready for you. I smiled, noting how different that deference felt now compared to when I was just James Crawford's rebellious daughter. Thank you. I'll wait a moment. My phone buzzed. A message from my executive assistant. Financial Times confirms tomorrow's cover. Market reaction already trending. CNBC wants an exclusive. Perfect timing. 15 years ago, I'd walked these same floors in a borrowed dress, listening to my classmates brag about their family legacies and trust funds. The Crawford name meant something then. Old money, old connections, old expectations. Until I broke them all. Oh my God, Alex. A shrill voice cut through my thoughts. You actually came. Melanie Porter Hampton, former class president and current social climber extraordinaire, air-kissed my cheeks. Her eyes swept over my Channel suit with the same calculating assessment she'd once used to judge everyone's prom dresses. We weren't sure you'd show, she continued, voice dripping honey-coated venom, given everything that happened with your family's situation. Ah, yes, the situation. When I'd rejected my father's demands to join the family investment firm, choosing instead to start my own company. When I'd sold my trust fund shares to fund my first startup, causing a scandal that still echoed through country club corridors. I wouldn't miss it, I replied smoothly. How's Thomas's hedge fund doing? Her smile flickered. Everyone knew her husband's fund had lost half its value in the last quarter, just like they knew he'd been quietly begging for investors at every social event this season. Managing, she said tightly. But enough about us. How's what do you call it? That little online business. Before I could answer, more familiar faces approached. William Street Clare, whose father had cut me off from family investments when I went solo. Catherine Aldridge Ross, who told everyone I was having a mental breakdown when I sold my Upper East Side apartment to fund my second venture. Alex Crawford, back from exile. William's laugh carried across the marble floors. Still playing entrepreneur? I took a slow sip of champagne, remembering similar mockery from years ago. The difference was, this time I wasn't here to prove anything. I was here to reveal everything. How is that going? Catherine leaned in, perfume expensive and interest fake. We heard you were struggling? Daddy mentioned something about rejected loan applications. Of course he had. Richard Aldridge never got over me turning down a partnership at his bank. Actually, I smiled, business is quite interesting at the moment. Oh, darling. Melanie's voice carried just enough to draw attention from nearby groups. You don't have to pretend with us. We all know startups are risky. There's no shame in admitting defeat. I'm sure Daddy would take you back at Crawford Investment Group. The growing circle of onlookers barely concealed their smirks. This was what they'd come for, the chance to see the prodigal daughter humbled, crawling back to the fold. Speaking of Crawford Investment, William cut in. James finally sold it, didn't he? After the market crash? Such a shame. But that's what happens when you trust the wrong people. The wrong people. He meant me, of course. They all blamed my departure for my father's eventual downfall, conveniently forgetting his risky investments and outdated strategies. Bill, I said quietly, using his childhood nickname. How's your family's shipping business? He stiffened. Managing. Really? Because I heard Docker Tech's new AI system is revolutionizing container tracking, making traditional methods obsolete. His face paled slightly. Docker Tech was my company's latest acquisition, a fact that wasn't public knowledge yet. Well, Melanie jumped in, clearly enjoying the tension. At least some of us maintained standards. Not everyone can handle real business, can they? Some people are better suited to smaller ventures. The ballroom had grown quieter, more people drifting toward our group. The show they'd been waiting for was starting. It's sweet that you keep trying, though, Catherine added with folk sympathy. Still chasing that dream of being independent. But really, Alex, isn't it time to be realistic? Join something stable? I checked my watch. The waiter should be arriving any moment. You know what they say, Melanie continued, warming to her audience. You can't fight legacy. We all end up exactly where we're meant to be. Some of us, she gestured to the gathered elite, at the top. And others. Miss Crawford? Right on cue, the waiter appeared with a silver tray. Today's Financial Times, as requested. I accepted the paper with a quiet thank you, aware of every eye in the circle watching. The front page faced down against the tray. Oh, keeping up with the markets? William smirked. Planning your next small venture? I turned the paper over slowly, letting them all see the cover. My portrait, professional and powerful, above the headline. Alexandre Curwford, ENTUREQRENUR of the year. How one woman built a $12 billion tech empire in secret. The silence was absolute. Melanie's champagne glass slipped from her fingers, shattering on marble. Catherine's carefully maintained smile cracked. William looked like he'd been slapped. You were saying something about legacy? I asked softly. About ending up where we're meant to be. The article continued below my photo. Crawford Technologies' revolutionary AI systems have quietly dominated market sectors from shipping to banking, with over 70% of major financial institutions now running on their platforms. Sources confirm upcoming IPO could value the company at over $20 billion. That's impossible. William stammered. Your father said. My father didn't know? I cut in. None of you did. That was the point. I let them digest that as I pulled out my phone, pretending to check messages. Actually, I was recording their reactions. A little gift for my PR team, who'd orchestrated this moment down to the last detail. But the loans. Catherine's voice had lost its condescending edge. Daddy said you were begging for financing. Your father, I smiled, like everyone else, saw exactly what I wanted them to see. It's amazing how much you can accomplish when people underestimate you. The whispers had started. Phones were coming out as people Googled my name, finding the carefully timed press releases that had just gone live. The truth about who really controlled the technology revolutionizing their family businesses. Now, I continued, enjoying the way they flinched at my voice, about that small venture of mine. The night was young, and I hadn't even shown them everything yet. After all, the magazine cover was just the beginning. The Wellington ballroom buzzed with barely contained chaos. The same people who'd been smirking at my failure minutes ago were now frantically typing on their phones, discovering just how deep my success ran. Docker Tech, mainframe systems, quantum finance. William muttered, scrolling through his phone. You own all of them. Technically, I replied, accepting a fresh glass of champagne. Crawford Technologies owns them, I just own Crawford Technologies. Catherine's husband, a junior partner at Goldman Sachs, pushed through the crowd. Alex, we should talk. Privately. About potential partnerships. Like the partnership your firm rejected last year. I smiled. When you said my proposal was amateur at best. He paled. That rejection had cost Goldman billions in potential revenues. Their competitors, who had signed with my company, were now dominating the AI-driven trading market. My phone buzzed again. A message from Marcus, my head of acquisitions. StreetClair shipping stock down 12% in after-hours trading. Investors connecting the dots about Docker Tech. Want me to proceed with the takeover? I typed back a quick hold. No need to crush William's family business tonight. That could wait until Monday. Alexandra. A familiar voice cut through the chaos. We need to talk. Richard Aldridge, Catherine's father and CEO of First Manhattan Bank, stood before me. The same man who'd laughed me out of his office 3 years ago when I'd approached him about modernizing their banking software. About what, Richard? About how First Manhattan's trading platform is now obsolete? Or about how your competitors are using my company's AI to outperform you 10 to 1? His face reddened. You deliberately misled us. No, I corrected him calmly. I offered you a chance to be part of the future. You chose to see what you wanted to see. A failed socialite playing entrepreneur. That was your mistake, not my deception. Melanie, who'd been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly found her voice. But your father, after the crash, you let everyone think. I let everyone think exactly what they assumed. I cut in. That I was desperate, broken, asking for loans I didn't need from banks that didn't matter. It's amazing how much people reveal when they think they have the upper hand. The screens around the ballroom, meant to show nostalgic photos from our prep school days, flickered to life. A series of business headlines began scrolling. Crawford Technologies revolutionizes banking security. AI giant acquires Docker Tech in stealth move. Tech's most mysterious CEO finally revealed. My PR team had perfect timing. You've been planning this, William accused. All of it. The reveal, the timing. Of course I have. I met his eyes steadily. Just like you all planned every snide remark, every closed door, every whispered rumor about my failures. The difference is, my plans actually worked. My phone buzzed again. This time it was Janet, my chief legal officer. Board memo leaked. First Manhattan considering emergency weekend session. Want me to send the acquisition proposal now? I smiled faintly. Richard must have missed that detail in the Financial Times article. The part about Crawford Technologies having enough cash reserves to acquire his bank outright. Mr. StreetClair? A young analyst pushed through the crowd, phone pressed to his ear. Sir, the Hong Kong office is calling. Something about our shipping contracts being invalidated. William's face went from red to white. What? Docker Tech's new terms of service. I explained. They take effect at midnight. Didn't anyone read the fine print? The room erupted in fresh chaos. More phones ringing, more urgent whispers. These people were finally realizing that while they'd been mocking my small business, I'd built something that could make or break their family fortunes with a single policy change. Why? Catherine's voice cracked slightly. Why do it this way? Why not just tell everyone from the beginning? I turned to her, remembering all the times she'd excluded me from charity boards and social committees after my breakdown. Because you all needed to learn something. Success isn't inherited, it's built. And sometimes, it's built in silence while people like you are making noise. Alexandra. Another voice, older, commanding. Bernard Wellington AOI, our old headmaster and current board member of half the companies I now controlled. This is unprecedented. No, I corrected him. This is overdue. For every girl you told to think smaller, dream safer, stay in her lane. For every innovation you dismissed because it didn't come from the right family or the right background. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. My phone lit up with a message from my executive assistant. CNBC anchor waiting. Live interview in 20 minutes? I checked my watch. Right on schedule. Now, I addressed the room. If you'll excuse me, I have a business to run. Several, actually. As I turned to leave, Melanie grabbed my arm. Wait, what happens now? To all of us? I looked at her perfectly manicured hand, then back at her face. That depends. On Monday, Crawford Technologies begins implementing its new partnership standards. Companies that align with our values will thrive. The others, I shrugged. Well, there's always your family names to fall back on. Oh, wait. The silence that followed me to the door was sweeter than any revenge I could have planned. But this wasn't about revenge. This was about power. Who really had it? Who only pretended to have it? And who had been quietly building it all along? Outside, my driver held the door to a sleek Maybach. Not the flashiest car in Manhattan, but certainly the most expensive. As we pulled away from the Sterling Grand, I opened my laptop to review the next phase of acquisitions. The reunion had been just the beginning. Monday would bring the real fireworks, and I hadn't even revealed my biggest move yet. The Sunday headlines rolled in like thunder before a storm. Tech's hidden giant. Crawford Technologies, set to dominate market. Wall Street stunned by stealth success of Madison Prep alum. First Manhattan Bank calls emergency board meeting. Street Claire shipping stock plummets in pre-market trading. I sat in my penthouse office, watching the sunrise paint Manhattan's skyline in shades of gold. The same view I'd had when I started this journey, back when the penthouse was my only asset and Crawford Technologies was just 3 people working out of a converted storage room. The CNBC interview has 2 million views already, my PR director Sarah reported. Social media is exploding. #Crawford takeover is trending. And the other matter? She smiled. Your father's assistant called. He's demanding a meeting. Of course he was. James Crawford, the man who told me I was throwing away generations of legacy when I started my company, would be watching his carefully constructed world unravel. Schedule it, I said, for after the morning announcements. My phone buzzed, a message from Melanie. Alex, please. Thomas's fund is already down 30%. We can work something out. I archived it without replying. Let her feel the same desperation she'd enjoyed watching in others. At precisely 9:00 a.m., Crawford Technologies' new partnership terms went live. The requirements were simple but revolutionary: complete transparency in business practices, ethical AI implementation, and a minimum 30% diversity quota in executive positions. Companies had until Friday to comply or lose access to our systems. The market reaction was instant. Companies that had sneered at my small business were now watching their stock prices swing wildly based on whether they met Crawford Tech standards. Ms. Crawford, my assistant's voice came through the intercom. Your father is here. He wouldn't wait. I straightened my Armani blazer. Send him in. James Crawford had aged since I'd last seen him. His hair was grayer, his stance less commanding, but his eyes still held that same mix of arrogance and anger. "What have you done?" he demanded without preamble. "Built something," I replied calmly. "Isn't that what you always wanted?" "Built something? You've destroyed relationships that took generations to establish." William's father called me in tears. "Richard Aldridge is facing a board revolt." Fascinating how quickly generations of relationships crumble when the power dynamic shifts. He slammed his hands on my desk. "This isn't how business is done." "No," I agreed. "This is how business should be done. Transparent, meritocratic, forward-thinking. You've made enemies of everyone who could have helped you." I pulled up a screen showing Crawford Technologies' market valuation. The number made him step back. "I don't need their help, Dad. I never did." "That's what you never understood. While you were all protecting your little circle of influence, the world changed. I just changed with it." "And now what?" he demanded. "You'll destroy everything we built." "No, I'll rebuild it. Better, stronger, more equitable." I stood, meeting his gaze. "The acquisition offer for Crawford Investment Group is still open, by the way. Though after today's market shift, I might need to adjust the price down." His face reddened. "You wouldn't dare." "Actually, I already have. Check your email." As if on cue, his phone buzzed. The color drained from his face as he read the updated offer. 40% lower than last week's valuation. "You can't." "I can. I did. And on Friday, when our new standards take effect, it'll be worth even less." I walked to the window. "Unless, of course, you implement the changes I've outlined, starting with the board composition." He stared at me, finally seeing what everyone else had missed all these years. I hadn't just built a company. I'd built a revolution. "The car will take you back to your office," I said, effectively dismissing him. "You have until Friday to decide." After he left, I opened my laptop to join the emergency board meeting of First Manhattan Bank. As their newest major shareholder, a position I'd acquired through a series of shell companies, I had some suggestions about their future direction. My phone lit up with another message, this time from Catherine. "Just heard about Mom's foundation. Please, we can explain." Ah, yes, the foundation. I'd almost forgotten about my team's audit of their charitable giving. The irregularities they'd found would make fascinating reading for the IRS. The afternoon brought a parade of former critics turned supplicants. William's father, begging to maintain their shipping contracts. Melanie's husband, offering inside information about competitor funds. Each one trying to save themselves from the tsunami they dismissed as a ripple. At 4:00 p.m., I had one last meeting. The Madison Prep Board of Trustees had requested an urgent discussion about their technology education program. Apparently, they'd heard about Crawford Technologies' new educational foundation, the one planning to fund tech scholarships for girls from underprivileged backgrounds. The same program they'd rejected when I proposed it 15 years ago. "Miss Crawford?" My assistant appeared. "The trustees are here, and there's something else." She handed me a tablet showing a live feed from the Sterling Grand. The reunion was supposed to continue through tomorrow, but the ballroom was empty. The elite who'd gathered to celebrate their status had scattered, too busy salvaging their empires to maintain social appearances. I smiled, remembering all the parties I'd been excluded from, all the whispers about the Crawford girl who'd lost her way. "Your next interview is in an hour," Sarah reminded me. "Bloomberg wants to discuss the IPO." "Push it to tomorrow," I decided. "Tonight, I have other plans. I took the elevator to the ground floor, nodding to the security team as I crossed the lobby. Outside, the evening was painting the city in shades of purple and gold. My driver opened the door to the Maybach. "Where to, Miss Crawford?" I gave him an address, one I hadn't visited in years. The small apartment where I'd started coding my first program, where I'd eaten ramen noodles while building the foundation of what would become Crawford Technologies. "Taking a trip down memory lane?" Sarah asked. "No," I smiled. "Picking up something for tomorrow's press conference." In my bag was the original business plan, written on cheap notebook paper, along with every rejection letter, every dismissive email, every condescending response I'd received. Tomorrow, they would become part of the Crawford Technologies Museum exhibit, a reminder that success doesn't always wear a familiar face. My phone buzzed one final time. A message from the Financial Times editor. Follow-up story confirmed. How Crawford Technologies is reshaping global business runs tomorrow. Front page again. I put the phone away, watching the city lights flicker to life. Somewhere out there, my former classmates were realizing that their world had changed forever. The social hierarchy they defended so fiercely had been rewritten. And I, the girl they'd written off as a failure, had done the rewriting. Success, I whispered to the city skyline, is the best revenge. But this wasn't just about revenge. It was about change. Real, lasting, systemic change. And I was just getting started.
"Hey, where are you right now?" "I've been sleeping at home. There's no sign of my husband at our home where I am now. He's lying to me. Let's go back to when I was pregnant with our first child. My name is Ashley. I was finally expecting our first child in our second year of marriage. Just 1 month to go until my due date. I'm 9 months pregnant. While I'm excited about the birth, I can easily imagine the confusion of going through childbirth and child rearing for the first time. I had planned to go back to my parents' house this weekend to have them help me out for a while. I mentioned the idea of going back home to my husband during the stable period of my pregnancy, but I thought he had probably forgotten, so I brought it up again today. While I was relaxing and watching TV, my husband casually mentioned, "Heading back to your parents?" "Oh yeah, you mentioned that. If you're going, just go. I can handle things here just fine without you." I was shocked by his dismissive tone, but I didn't want to argue, so I decided not to argue back. "Well, I'll be going back this weekend. Our baby is due next month, and I plan to stay there for a month or two after giving birth. So I'll probably be back in about 3 months. Please make sure the baby's room is clean and ready." Okay. I would have done it anyway. "Oh, and I can't see you off this weekend because I have to work." "Oh, all right." I had hoped he would at least come with me to the station, but that hope faded fast. I knew he was always busy with work, even on weekends. But I wish he would think about how hard it will be for me, heavily pregnant and with lots of luggage, to manage on the train. I understand he's busy, but I do feel lonely sometimes. I don't want our soon-to-be-born baby to feel lonely either. Plus, I'm worried about whether we can raise our child together like this. When did he become so distant? With these mixed feelings, I started packing. Since I still had time before going to my parents' house, I decided to send most of my luggage through a delivery service. I had already cleaned the house from top to bottom when I started my maternity leave early. They say pregnant women have a nesting instinct. I had set up a crib and prepared a space for the baby, excited to start our new life as a family of 3. When I returned after 2.5 months, I found that my husband was being really messy despite my efforts to clean up before leaving. Maybe I cleaned too early, but still he seemed to have forgotten how to live in a tidy home. He'd leave half-empty drink bottles lying around and ignore the cardboard boxes from his online shopping. I realized that I'd never seen him cook or clean since we got married. Even though I kept trying to tidy up, things only got messier, and I started worrying about the state of the house while I was away. But with the baby coming soon, I had to focus on preparing for childbirth. The weekend came quickly, and I went to my parents' home. Meanwhile, my husband didn't even see me off to work. While I relaxed at my parents' place, I stayed in touch with him through emails every day and called him about every 3 days. But gradually, he started ignoring my calls more often. When I managed to get through to him, I noticed he'd been avoiding my calls lately. I asked, "You've been hard to reach lately, are you busy?" But his answers were vague, like sort of or not really. Then I asked him nervously, "You're not cheating on me, are you?" I've heard some men do that when their wives are pregnant. He sounded annoyed and denied it, saying, "No, why would I do that?" It's frustrating to be accused. Feeling uneasy, I quickly apologized. Having these worries while carrying our precious baby wasn't good for my mental health. I needed to trust my husband, I decided. A few weeks later, I started having labor pains. As I prepared to go to the hospital, I called my husband. I felt embarrassed to show how much pain I was in, but I really wanted him there when our baby was born. I thought surely he'd be touched by the birth of our child. I'm in labor. It usually takes about half a day for the first baby to arrive, so if you leave now, you should make it in time. I really want you here when the baby is born. You can even cut the umbilical cord. When I asked him to come, my husband sighed in annoyance. "What? You want me to come by train right now?" "Sorry, I'm tired too, I can't. I have work tomorrow." I was shocked. "Are you still talking about work at a time like this? Our baby is being born. Isn't our child more important than work?" He snapped back, "Stop it. My job can't be replaced. This is a once-in-a-lifetime moment, I know. But my work is crucial. If I don't do it, it won't get done. Can't you understand? I have to go. I'm busy." And he hung up. I tried to convince him, but he wouldn't listen. As I sobbed through the pain of labor, I wondered why he was so indifferent to our child's birth. From the moment I found out I was pregnant, my child became my priority. But as a father, he seemed so distant. So I faced childbirth alone. The pain lasted a whole day, and the next day, a beautiful baby boy was born. The baby was so tiny, adorable, and dearly loved. After leaving the hospital, my parents doted on him, teaching me all sorts of things about taking care of him. Within a month, I had gotten pretty good at giving him baths. My parents worried about me, though. "Are you sure you're okay with your husband? We can't help but worry about you when we leave." But not wanting to trouble them, I reassured them, saying, "I think I'll manage somehow. My health is improving faster than I thought. I might go back home next week," I told them. "Really, don't overdo it. Let us know if anything happens," they replied. People often say that recovering from childbirth is like recovering from a car accident, but thanks to hormones, I was in good spirits and my body was healing well. I was also getting the hang of taking care of the baby, so I decided to go back home a bit earlier than planned. While I stayed with my parents, my husband hardly reached out, and even when I sent him photos and videos of our son, he didn't seem interested. I figured maybe the feeling of being a parent really kicks in when you're actively involved in raising the baby, and perhaps he wouldn't feel like a father until he spent time with our son. That's what I hoped, at least. It kept me going. I decided to surprise my husband by having my parents drop me off at home. I didn't tell him I was coming, but he should have been home since it was his day off. I wondered how he'd react when he saw our baby for the first time. Would our baby like our home? After a few hours' drive, we got home. I held our son while my parents brought in our luggage, and I unlocked the door. But when we walked in, the house was dark and silent. "We're back a bit earlier than expected, but we're home now." "Huh, no one's here. What's that smell?" As we stepped into the living room, a terrible odor hit us. When we turned on the light, we couldn't believe what we saw. The room was a mess, like a garbage dump. Dirty dishes and half-eaten food cluttered the sink. Clothes and trash were strewn all over. And there was even moldy juice sitting out, stinking up the place. The table was covered in stains and grime. The bathroom was also filthy, with black mold in the shower and sink, and the toilet was dirty and smelly. And worst of all, the crib we had prepared for our son was filled with unused cardboard boxes and trash bags. I had asked them to keep the house clean for our baby, but this was the opposite, and I was shocked. There's no way we can live in such a dirty house, and I'm especially upset about the crib being ruined. Seriously, what's going on here? There was no way we could raise a baby in a place like this. My parents were furious and searched for my husband, checking every room, but he was nowhere to be found. Where could he be on his day off? Was he working another weekend shift? But we couldn't even confirm if he had been working those shifts before. He wasn't paid extra for weekend work, and his company followed the regular work schedule. I had been suspicious of his disappearing acts on weekends. Let's try calling him, I suggested. Unable to bear being in the messy room any longer, I ushered my confused parents outside and dialed my husband's number. But he didn't pick up. Finally, after the third attempt, he answered. "Hey, where are you?" I asked. "I'm at home," he replied. "Why?" "Just at home," he repeated. We had searched the entire house, but there was no sign of my husband. Could he possibly be buried under all this trash? But we couldn't sense anyone there, and his voice didn't sound like he had just woken up. Then I heard a woman's voice on the phone. I couldn't make out what she was saying, but it was definitely a woman's voice. That's when it hit me. He's cheating on me. I can't believe he'd do this while neglecting our child. The house was a disaster while we were away, and he was cheating on me. I was furious. A father like him isn't needed for our son. I'm done with a husband like this. If he prefers that other woman, then he can have her. How can you live in such a filthy and foul-smelling house? Oh, I understand. Maybe a burglar broke in. I need to call the police. What? But you're at your parents' house, right? What are you saying? Suddenly, my anger boiled over at my husband's evasiveness, and I raised my voice. You're the one lying about being at home, aren't you? Stop pretending. It's completely unacceptable to let the crib turn into a mess. I'm not returning to this house. We're getting a divorce. I ended the call abruptly and quickly reported to the police about the supposed burglary, intending to confront my husband. I instructed my parents and son to head back to my parents' house and waited for my husband in front of our home. The police arrived before my husband did. I welcomed them into the house as if they were guests, and soon after, I spotted my husband approaching, accompanied by another woman. As my husband came closer, his expression seemed to say, "This is bad." I confronted him, saying, "Hey, you weren't supposed to be back until next month." "But who is she?" The woman next to him glared at me, her arms crossed. "And who are you, for that matter?" she retorted. Despite encountering his mistress, I strangely felt calm. I decided to question the woman. It turned out my husband had been meeting her without revealing he was married. I was so disgusted with him that I didn't know how to react anymore. "Hey, at least let me explain," my husband pleaded, trying to grab my shoulder, but I slapped his hand away, not wanting him to touch me. "Don't touch me. It's disgusting. The police are checking the room right now. I hope you're embarrassed having them see the mess you've made. I'm leaving now. You can explain to the police. Goodbye." Leaving them stunned, I went back to my parents' house, ignoring the numerous calls from my husband. That night, I finally decided to respond. It seemed he had explained the situation to the police, and he returned home looking troubled. It must have been embarrassing for him to see the police struggling in the messy room, but he brought it upon himself. After being rejected by the woman he had been deceiving, all that was left for him was shame and a wrecked house. "Please, I'm sorry. Come back. I've been looking forward to seeing our son," he pleaded. If he truly felt sorry, he should have come to my parents' house at least. Thinking he could apologize over the phone, and everything would be fine shows what kind of person he is. I can't imagine a future with him. Even though you never showed any interest before, you suddenly care? You weren't even there when I gave birth, despite me asking you to come several times, I pointed out. "Well, I thought you knew that I would. I'll clean up the room. I can't do household chores without you. I need you," he pleaded. I could imagine my husband growing more desperate and flustered on the other end of the line as I continued to reject him. "No matter how much you beg, it's not happening. You should have stuck with that woman. If you can't handle housework, have her do it for you," I responded firmly. "But that was just a fling. It was a momentary lapse. You're the only one for me, Ashley," he insisted. "A fling? Weren't you seeing her every time you said you had to work overtime?" I countered. "Well, that's a different—" He trailed off, unable to explain himself. I pressed my husband, who was mumbling incoherently, and he confessed that he had been cheating on me with multiple women from his high school that he had reconnected with at a friend's wedding party. He's a scumbag either way. There's no point in talking, I thought to myself as I listened to him desperately apologizing, his voice close to tears. "I can't believe it. You disgust me. Were you planning to touch our son with those hands?" "Unthinkable," I said, feeling a chill run down my spine. I won't do it again. I'll come to pick you up right now. I want to see you and our son. I'll prove my sincerity. Let's go home together, he pleaded. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from his defiant voice. What was he thinking at this point? I can't trust you. There's nothing more to talk about. I'll raise our son on my own, I declared firmly. Ashley, please forgive. He began, but I hung up before I could hear the rest of his words. The sound of the call ending echoed emptily in my ear, and that marked the end of our short marital life. Half a year has passed since then, and I've decided to start working, relying on my parents for support. Once I've saved up enough money, I intend to leave my parents' house and start living on my own with my son. I'm in the midst of divorce negotiations with my husband, mainly for the sake of alimony. Despite his limited experience living alone, my husband is apparently unable to manage household chores, and most of his meals are from dining out, leaving his house in disarray. However, that's no longer my concern. I will do my best, showering my son with abundant love and care.
The mahogany doors of Harrison International's boardroom felt heavier than usual as I pushed them open that morning. 24 pairs of eyes turned to me, none friendly, all waiting. My Uncle Marcus's smirk told me everything I needed to know. This wasn't a regular quarterly meeting. I'm Alexander Harrison, and until exactly 9:47 a.m. that Thursday morning, I was the Chief Strategy Officer of Harrison International, a company my grandfather built from nothing into a $12 billion energy infrastructure giant. More importantly, I was the one who had spent the last 3 years building our Middle Eastern partnerships, particularly the landmark $2 billion Saudi development deal that would transform the company's future. "Sit down, Alexandra," Uncle Marcus commanded from the head of the table, my father's old seat. He'd claimed it after Dad's heart attack last year, along with the CEO position that should have been mine. "We have serious matters to discuss." I took my usual seat, calm despite the tension crackling through the air. My hand instinctively touched the small silver pendant at my neck, a gift from my father, and unknown to everyone else in the room, a high-fidelity recording device. I'd started wearing it to meetings 6 months ago, when I first noticed documents disappearing from my office and private conversations mysteriously reaching our competitors. "The board has convened this emergency session," Marcus continued, shuffling papers importantly, "to address grave concerns about the company's strategic direction, specifically regarding our Middle Eastern expansion." My heart rate picked up, but I kept my face neutral. I'd expected this, planned for it even. The Saudi deal was too big, too transformative for Marcus to let me complete it. Success would have cemented my position as the natural heir to Harrison International. "Our review indicates gross mismanagement of the Saudi negotiations," he declared, his voice dripping with fake concern. "Unauthorized promises, misrepresented capabilities, and frankly, amateur handling of delicate cultural sensitivities." The lies rolled off his tongue smoothly. He'd clearly been practicing. Around the table, board members nodded gravely. Most were Marcus's golf buddies or business school classmates, installed over the years through careful maneuvering. "That's absolutely false," I stated calmly, pulling out my tablet. "I can show you the detailed negotiation records." "No need," Marcus cut me off. "We've seen enough. Prince Abdullah's office has already expressed serious reservations about continuing our partnership." Now that was interesting. I'd spoken with Adil, Prince Abdullah's chief advisor, just yesterday. There had been no reservations, only excitement about next week's contract signing. "Harrison International requires leadership that understands the complexities of global business," Marcus continued. "Not someone promoting their personal agenda over company interests." I almost laughed at the irony. Marcus, who'd never worked a day outside Connecticut, lecturing me about global business. I'd spent 5 years in our Dubai office, learned Arabic, built relationships across the region while he played politics in Hartford. Therefore, he straightened his tie with satisfaction. The board has unanimously voted to terminate your employment, effective immediately. The room fell silent. This was his moment of triumph, orchestrated down to the last detail. Security waiting outside, my office already being packed up, probably a press release drafted announcing my resignation to pursue other opportunities. I stood slowly, gathering my things with deliberate calm. I assume you've informed Prince Abdullah's team of this change in leadership. A flicker of uncertainty crossed Marcus's face. That's no longer your concern. Of course, I smiled, thinking of the WhatsApp message I'd sent to Adil this morning, warning him to watch the live stream of this meeting through the security camera feed I'd given him access to. I'll have my office cleared by noon. Security will escort you out now, Marcus said sharply. We can't risk you accessing sensitive information. As two guards appeared at the door, I turned to face the board one last time. Just remember, Uncle Marcus, in business, as in family, trust is everything. Once broken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. He waved his hand dismissively. Save the lectures, Alexandra. You're done here. I let the guards lead me out, past shocked employees, and through the marble lobby of the building my grandfather had built. My phone was already buzzing with messages, but I ignored them all except one, a single line from Adil. We saw everything. Call me. In my car, I finally allowed myself a small smile as I reached for the silver pendant. The recording would be useful, but it wasn't my real insurance policy. No, Marcus had done exactly what I expected, exactly what I needed him to do. He just didn't know it yet. I drove to my apartment in the city, a space that had seen little use given my usual 80-hour work weeks. The modern furnishings and floor-to-ceiling windows offered a perfect view of Harrison Tower, where Marcus was undoubtedly celebrating his victory. Opening my laptop, I connected to a secure server and began downloading files. Thousands of documents, emails, and recordings I'd been carefully collecting over the past 6 months. Every questionable deal, every manipulated report, every secret board meeting where Marcus and his allies had plotted against my father's vision for the company. My phone rang. Adil's private number. Your uncle is a fool, he said without preamble. The prince is furious. That man doesn't understand the first thing about respect or family honor. No, I agreed. He doesn't. But he understands greed perfectly well. We're withdrawing from all negotiations with Harrison International, Adil confirmed. The prince has already signed the termination papers. But Alexandra, he's very interested in your alternative proposal. I'd looked at the business plan open on my screen. 3 years of work, carefully hidden from Marcus and his spies. A new company, built on my expertise and connections, designed to do everything Harrison International could have done better, cleaner, more ethically. Tell His Highness I'll be in Riyadh next week, I said. And Adil. Make sure Marcus knows exactly why the deal fell apart. After hanging up, I spent the next few hours organizing the evidence I'd gathered. The recordings would prove useful eventually, but not yet. First, I'd let Marcus deal with the chaos of losing the Saudi contract. Let him face the board's questions, the shareholders' anger, the media's speculation. My father had always told me, in our business, patience is more powerful than any weapon. He'd built Harrison International on that principle, taking time to develop relationships, earn trust, create real value. Marcus thought he'd won by forcing me out. He didn't realize he just freed me to do what I'd been preparing for all along. The company my grandfather built might be lost to greed and betrayal, but its legacy would live on, just not in the way Marcus expected. My phone buzzed again, a news alert this time. Harrison International's stock had dropped 12% on rumors of the Saudi deal's collapse. Another message followed, this one from my father's old friend on the board. "What have you done?" "Nothing yet," I whispered, touching the silver pendant. "But tomorrow everything changes." Standing at my window, watching the sun set behind Harrison Tower, I felt a strange mix of sadness and anticipation. The company had been my life, my legacy, my future. Now it was my past, but as I reviewed my plans for what came next, I couldn't help but smile. Marcus thought he'd written the end of my story. He didn't realize he just helped me begin a new one. The real work would start tomorrow. But tonight, I had one more call to make, to a small but influential investment bank in Dubai, run by Prince Abdullah's cousin. After all, a new company would need funding, and I knew exactly where to find it. My uncle had taught me one valuable lesson. In business, like in war, you don't just plan for the battle in front of you. You plan for the war to come. 3 days after my dramatic exit from Harrison International, I sat in my home office watching Marcus unravel on live television. The business news ticker told the story. Harrison International stock plunges 31% as Saudi deal collapses. CEO Marcus Harrison to address shareholders. My uncle looked nothing like the smug victor who'd fired me earlier that week. His silk tie was slightly askew, dark circles shadowed his eyes, and sweat beaded on his forehead as he faced the press. The temporary suspension of negotiations with our Saudi partners is merely a standard review process, he insisted, his voice lacking its usual confidence. Harrison International remains committed to our Middle Eastern expansion strategy. I muted the TV as my secure phone line rang. The caller ID showed a Dubai number. "Alexandra," Prince Abdullah's smooth voice filled my ear. "I trust you're enjoying the morning news?" "Immensely, Your Highness," I replied, suppressing a smile. "Though I suspect Marcus isn't sharing your entertainment." "Indeed not, especially after this morning's meeting with our banking consortium." The prince's tone carried a hint of satisfaction. "They've frozen the preliminary financing for all Harrison International projects in the region. Your uncle seems to lack your delicate touch with relationship management." I thought of the hundreds of hours I'd spent building those relationships, the late-night meetings, the careful negotiations, the respect earned through understanding their culture and business practices. Marcus had assumed those connections would transfer to him automatically, his first mistake of many. "Thank you for your support, Your Highness. I hope to repay your confidence soon." "About that," he said, "my team has reviewed your proposal. We're very interested, but some of our partners have concerns about potential litigation from Harrison International." Actually, I opened my laptop, pulling up a secure folder. "I've prepared detailed documentation addressing those concerns. Would tomorrow be too soon to present it to your legal team?" The prince chuckled. "Always prepared, aren't you?" "Very well. My jet will be at Teterboro Airport at 9 a.m. Don't worry about a visa. It's been arranged." After ending the call, I turned back to the TV. Marcus was still talking, making promises he couldn't keep about contracts that no longer existed. Part of me felt guilty watching my family's company implode, but I pushed the feeling aside. Marcus had made his choice when he betrayed not just me, but everything my grandfather and father had built. My phone buzzed with a text from Sarah Chen, my father's former executive assistant who now worked for Marcus. He's called an emergency board meeting for tomorrow morning. Completely panicking. Thought you should know. I'd stayed in touch with Sarah after my father's heart attack, recognizing a kindred spirit who valued loyalty over politics. She'd been my eyes and ears inside Harrison International for months, warning me about Marcus's schemes long before he made his move. Thanks, I texted back. Stay safe. Things might get rough soon. Opening my laptop, I began reviewing the presentation I'd prepared for Prince Abdullah's team. The plan was ambitious, a new company that would revolutionize energy infrastructure development across the Middle East and North Africa. Sustainable technologies, local partnerships, and transparent operations. Everything Harrison International should have been, but wasn't under Marcus's leadership. My phone buzzed again. Another news alert. Harrison International faces shareholder lawsuit over Saudi deal collapse. Right on schedule. I'd known the lawsuit was coming. Martin Ross, one of our largest institutional investors, had called me yesterday, furious about the deal's collapse. I'd expressed appropriate sympathy and casually mentioned certain board meeting minutes that might interest his legal team. Documents that showed Marcus had been warned repeatedly about misrepresenting the company's capabilities to Middle Eastern partners. The doorman buzzed. My evening appointment had arrived. David Parker, Harrison International's former chief financial officer, stepped into my apartment looking nervous but determined. My father had hired David 20 years ago, and Marcus had forced him into early retirement last year. Are you sure about this? He asked, setting his briefcase on my dining table. Once we start, there's no going back. I poured us both coffee, strong and black, the way we drunk it during late nights at the office reviewing contracts and financial projections. Marcus made his choice, I said firmly. Now it's time to make ours. David nodded, opening his briefcase. I've gone through everything you sent me. The pattern is clear. Systematic manipulation of project costs, hidden fees, inflated profit projections. Marcus wasn't just trying to push you out. He was setting up a massive fraud. Show me, I said, pulling my chair closer. For the next 3 hours, we pored over financial statements, internal audits, and project reports. David's expertise revealed what I'd suspected but couldn't prove. Marcus had been cooking the books for years, hiding losses and inflating profits to maintain control of the board. The Saudi deal would have exposed everything, David explained, pointing to a particularly creative bit of accounting. The level of scrutiny from their auditors would have uncovered all of this. That's why he had to stop it, and why he had to get rid of me, I added. I knew too much about the real numbers. Exactly. David sat back, looking tired, but satisfied. What's your next move? I walked to the window, looking out at the city lights. Tomorrow, I meet with Prince Abdullah's team in Riyadh. Next week, we launch Harrison Global Partners. Using your mother's maiden name, David noted. Nice touch. The Harrison name still means something in this industry, I said, just not at Harrison International anymore. David was quiet for a moment. Your father would be proud, you know, not just of the business plan, but of how you've handled all this, taking the high road, building something new instead of just seeking revenge. I thought of my father, remembering our last conversation before his heart attack. He'd warned me about Marcus, made me promise to protect his legacy. At the time, I thought he meant the company. Now I understood he meant something more important: integrity, vision, the right way of doing business. Will you come with me? I asked David. I need a CFO I can trust. He smiled, gathering his papers. I thought you'd never ask. Someone has to keep your books straight. After David left, I spent another hour refining my presentation for tomorrow. The pieces were falling into place. Financing from Prince Abdullah's consortium, operational expertise from David and other former Harrison International executives Marcus had pushed out, contracts ready to be signed with key clients who had followed me. My phone buzzed one last time that night. An email from Adil. Board meeting didn't go well for your uncle. 3 directors resigned. Others asking questions about financial reports. He's scared. Good, I thought. He should be. The next morning, as my car approached Teterboro Airport, I saw the Harrison International logo on a billboard. My grandfather's signature turned into a corporate symbol. Soon that logo would be as outdated as Marcus's way of doing business. My new company's logo was already designed, incorporating elements of Islamic geometry with modern clean lines. A bridge between cultures, just like our business model. Prince Abdullah's team had seen preliminary sketches and approved enthusiastically. The private jet waited on the tarmac, its engines already warming up. As I climbed the stairs, I remembered another flight 5 years ago, my first trip to Dubai, sent by my father to learn the business from the ground up. I'd been nervous then, unsure of my place in the family empire. Now, boarding another plane to the Middle East, I felt only certainty. Marcus thought he'd ended my career. Instead, he'd forced me to create something better, something truly mine. My phone buzzed as I settled into my seat. Sarah again. Marcus just fired the entire Middle East division. Complete chaos here. I turned off my phone as the jet began taxiing. Let Marcus burn bridges. I was building new ones. The 14-hour flight to Riyadh gave me time to perfect my presentation and review the contracts David had prepared. Everything had to be perfect. This wasn't just about business anymore. It was about showing a better way to operate in a complex global environment. I thought about the recordings still saved in my silver pendant, evidence of Marcus's lies and manipulation. I hadn't released it yet, hadn't needed to. His own actions were doing more damage than any exposed secrets could. As the plane crossed the Atlantic, I opened my father's old notebook, a leather-bound journal he'd carried for 30 years. His business philosophy was scattered throughout its pages. Wisdom I'd only now begun to fully appreciate. Success in business, he'd written, is like playing chess. You don't win by making the most aggressive moves. You win by positioning yourself so carefully that your opponent's own moves become their undoing. Marcus was aggressive, playing for quick wins and immediate gratification. I was playing a longer game, one that would reshape not just one company, but an entire industry. The sun was setting over the Saudi desert when we began our descent into Riyadh. In the fading light, the modern skyline looked like something from a science fiction movie, a vision of the future rising from ancient sands. My future was out there too, waiting to be built. Tomorrow, I would stand before Prince Abdullah and his advisors, not as a displaced heir to a troubled company, but as the founder of something new and transformative. Marcus had taught me one final lesson. Sometimes losing everything is the only way to discover what you're truly capable of building. As the plane touched down, my phone reconnected to the network. Dozens of messages waited, but only one mattered, from Martin Ross, the institutional investor. Board meeting leaked. Marcus claiming Saudi deal collapsed due to your interference, demanding investigation. I smiled, thinking of the documents waiting in my briefcase, proof of every real reason the deal had failed, every lie Marcus had told, every ethical line he'd crossed. Let him investigate. Let him dig deeper. The hole he was digging would only make his fall more spectacular. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new battles to fight. But tonight, watching the Riyadh lights grow closer, I felt only peace. The kind of peace that comes from knowing you're exactly where you're supposed to be, doing exactly what you were meant to do. Marcus thought he'd written my ending. He didn't realize he'd only written my beginning. The Riyadh sun was just rising when my phone rang. Sarah's voice was urgent. "Alexandra, turn on CNBC now." I flicked on the hotel room's television just in time to see the breaking news banner. Harrison International CEO Marcus Harrison steps down amid financial scandal. Emergency board meeting called. My uncle's carefully constructed world was crumbling, faster than even I had anticipated. 3 weeks had passed since my presentation to Prince Abdullah and his team. 3 weeks that had changed everything. The board received an anonymous package this morning, Sarah continued. Full documentation of every fraudulent transaction, every manipulated report. They're saying the SEC has opened a formal investigation. I touched the silver pendant at my neck, still containing its damning recording, still unused. I hadn't needed it. Marcus had done exactly what I'd expected. As pressure mounted, he'd gotten sloppy, desperate, started making mistakes. "How bad is it?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. "Bad," Sarah confirmed. The auditors found everything: hidden accounts, inflated contracts, millions in unauthorized consulting fees. Some board members are already calling for criminal charges. I turned up the volume as a financial analyst appeared on screen. This could be the biggest corporate fraud case since Enron. The question isn't whether Harrison International will survive, but in what form. My other phone, the secure line, buzzed with a text from Prince Abdullah. "Time for Phase 2. "Yes," I replied. "Launch everything." Within hours, press releases went live across 3 continents. Harrison Global Partners, my new company, announced major infrastructure contracts with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar, totaling over $5 billion in projects. The same projects Harrison International had lost, now restructured and improved. But we weren't just taking their contracts. We were taking their best people too. David Parker, now my CFO, had spent weeks quietly recruiting key executives and project managers from Harrison International. People who'd been marginalized under Marcus's leadership, who believed in my father's vision of ethical, sustainable business practices. "Alexandra," my assistant knocked on the hotel room door. "Prince Abdullah's car is here." The drive through Riyadh's bustling financial district felt surreal. Massive digital billboards already displayed our new company logo, modern yet respectful of traditional design, just like our business model. In the prince's private office, dozens of people waited: business leaders, government officials, media representatives. This wasn't just another contract signing. This was a statement about the future of international business in the region. "My friends," Prince Abdullah began, standing to address the room. "Today we witness not just the birth of a new company, but a new way of doing business. Harrison Global Partners represents everything we value: respect for tradition while embracing innovation, profit with purpose, partnerships built on trust." I caught my reflection in the window as I walked to the podium. Power suit perfectly pressed, mother's pearls at my neck beside the silver pendant, father's journal in my briefcase. 3 generations of Harrison business wisdom, reimagined for a new era. "Thank you, Your Highness," I began. "When my grandfather founded Harrison International 50 years ago, He believed business could be both profitable and principled. That vision got lost somewhere along the way, but it wasn't destroyed. It was just waiting for the right moment to be reborn. As I outlined our plans, renewable energy infrastructure, local workforce development, transparent governance, I saw heads nodding, faces lighting up with recognition. This was what they'd wanted all along, not just projects and profits, but true partnership. My phone buzzed discreetly. Another message from Sarah. Marcus just tried to delete the server backups. It stopped him. He's barricaded in his office with security outside. I pushed the image aside, focusing on the contracts being passed around the table. Signature after signature, handshake after handshake. Years of relationship building paying off in ways Marcus had never understood. Back in my hotel suite that evening, I finally allowed myself to watch the full coverage of Harrison International's implosion. The stock had been halted after falling 60%. Board members were resigning hourly. Class action lawsuits were being filed. David called just before midnight. "You need to see this email. Marcus tried to transfer $50 million to a Cayman Islands account this afternoon. Treasury caught it. Forward it to the SEC," I instructed. "And David? Make sure our first quarter numbers are perfect. We're going to be under a microscope after this." "Already done," he assured me. "By the way, the talent acquisition team says we've received over 300 resumes from Harrison International employees since this morning." I wasn't surprised. Good people want to work for good companies. Marcus had forgotten that basic truth. The next morning brought an unexpected call from my father's hospital room in Connecticut. "I saw the news," he said, his voice stronger than it had been in months. "Both sets of news." "Dad," "You did exactly right." He cut me off. The company needed this wake-up call. Marcus needed to be stopped. "I didn't want it to end this way," I admitted. "No, but you were prepared for it. That's what makes you a better leader than your uncle ever was." He paused. "I'm transferring my Harrison International shares to your new company's employee ownership trust." I sat down, stunned. Those shares, nearly 15% of the company, were worth hundreds of millions, even at the currently depressed price. "The workers shouldn't suffer for Marcus's crimes," Dad continued. "This way, they have a choice: stay with what's left of Harrison International or join something new, something better." Tears pricked my eyes. "Thank you, Dad." "Don't thank me. Just build something worthy of the trust people are placing in you." Over the next week, events moved at lightning speed. Marcus was arrested trying to board a private plane to Venezuela. The SEC appointed an independent monitor to oversee Harrison International. Our new headquarters in Dubai neared completion. Then came the morning I'd been both anticipating and dreading. 1 month to the day after Marcus had fired me, I stood in the lobby of Harrison Tower. Not as an employee, but as a competitor, a creator, a leader in my own right. The security guards, the same ones who had escorted me out, nodded respectfully as I passed. News travels fast in corporate circles. Success commands its own kind of authority. The boardroom looked exactly the same. Mahogany doors, leather chairs, my grandfather's portrait on the wall. But the people were different. Independent directors now, appointed by the shareholders' committee. No more country club cronies. "Thank you for coming, Ms. Harrison," the new board chairman began. "We've asked you here to discuss a possible merger between Harrison International and Harrison Global Partners." I opened my father's journal, drawing strength from his wisdom. "I appreciate the offer, but no. Harrison International needs to clean house, rebuild trust, find its own way forward. Meanwhile, we're creating something new, something that never could have existed within the old structure. Even if we offered you the CEO position? I smiled, thinking of my office in Dubai, overlooking the future. I already have a company to run. Later that day, I visited my father in the hospital. His room was filled with flowers, not from family or social climbers, but from employees, clients, and partners who remembered how he'd run the company. "You saw the board?" he asked. I nodded. They wanted a merger. I declined. "Good." He pointed to the small table beside his bed. "That came for you this morning." A simple envelope lay there, addressed to me in my grandfather's distinctive handwriting. Inside was a single sheet of paper, dated just before his death. "My dearest Alexandra, if you're reading this, then everything I feared about Marcus has come to pass, and everything I hoped for in you has proven true. Power corrupts, but purpose sustains. Never forget the difference. Your loving grandfather, William Harrison." I folded the letter carefully, tucking it into the journal beside my father's bed. "The Saudi contracts begin next month," I told him. "We're revolutionizing how infrastructure projects are developed in the region. Sustainable technology, local partnerships, complete transparency. Everything the company should have been." He nodded. "Everything it will be," I corrected, "just with a different name and a better foundation." 1 year later, I stood on the stage at the Middle East Energy Conference, accepting the Innovation in Sustainable Development Award. Harrison Global Partners had exceeded every projection, not just in profits, but in positive impact. Marcus watched the ceremony on a prison television, serving year 1 of a 15-year sentence for securities fraud. The company he tried to steal had collapsed under the weight of his crimes, but its people had found new homes, new purposes, new futures. As I looked out over the audience, faces from a dozen countries, cultures, and backgrounds, I saw not just business success, but my grandfather's vision reborn. Power used wisely, profit with principle, purpose aligned with progress. Business is never just about money, I told them. It's about legacy, about the kind of world we help create. Sometimes the worst betrayals lead us to our best opportunities. Sometimes losing everything shows us what we're truly meant to build. My silver pendant lay in a desk drawer back in Dubai, its recorded evidence never needed. Marcus had destroyed himself more thoroughly than any exposure could have managed. I'd learned my father's lesson well. Patience is more powerful than revenge. That evening, watching the sun set over the Persian Gulf from my office, I opened my grandfather's old leather portfolio, now containing contracts and proposals for the next phase of Harrison Global Partners' expansion. The future stretched out before us, bright with possibility. My phone buzzed. Prince Abdullah's number. "Ready to discuss the African expansion?" I smiled, reaching for my father's journal. Time to write the next chapter. Marcus had tried to end my story. Instead, he'd helped me begin a better one. Sometimes that's how legacy works, not passing down what was, but building what should be. The Harrison name still stood for something in the business world, just not what Marcus had tried to make it. Something better, something lasting, something true. And that was the greatest victory of all.